On a cold pier, a curvy night shift caterer sees guns rise and throws herself in front of a feared kingpin. She drags him behind steel, lights a flare, and saves his life. But when the smoke clears, he doesn't just say thanks. He locks down the city to protect her and claims she's not safe anywhere but by his side. A fake engagement. One bed they promise not to share, cameras hidden in flowers, a red laser on the kitchen counter. Someone inside wants her blamed. He's ice to the world and warm only to her, until a party built to lure a traitor explodes into chaos. Lights out, shots fired, a secret drive stuffed where no one would look, the rival smiling in the dark, and the man she saved turning the whole war on, with one kiss that says, mine. But what did he see in her eyes that night? Weakness, or the one thing he can't control? Who planted the proof that could bury them both? And when love becomes bait, will this protection turn into the deadliest mistake of his life, or the move that saves them both? The armored SUV glided through Brooklyn's shadowy streets, its thick windows muffling the city noise. Opal's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The leather seat felt too soft, too expensive against her work clothes that still smelled like the wedding reception's garlic shrimp. Gabriel sat across from her, his presence filling the space with quiet intensity. His suit, despite the chaos, remained immaculate except for a small tear at the shoulder. He hadn't holstered his gun, keeping it ready across his lap. I'm Opal Hayes, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. And you're Gabriel Santoro. Everyone knows the Santoro family owns half the waterfront. She tried for a smile that came out wobbly. Though usually there's less shooting at the venues I cater. His eyes, sharp as cut steel, tracked every movement she made. You recognized the setup. Saw the shooter before my own security did. It wasn't a question. Opal's fingers twisted in her apron strings. I grew up in Bensonhurst. You learn to spot trouble, or you become trouble. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her lightheaded. Look, about my van, I have 3 events tomorrow. I can't afford to lose a day's work. Your work schedule is no longer your concern. Gabriel's tone was final, but not unkind. Those men filmed you. Within hours, every family in New York will know your face. The woman who saved a Santoro becomes a valuable target. I'm not some damsel you need to lock in a tower. Opal straightened her spine, ignoring how his presence made the vehicle feel smaller. I have responsibilities, bills, a life. Had, he corrected softly. Your old life ended the moment you chose to save mine. His gaze fell to her sleeve, where blood had started to seep through. You're hurt. It's nothing. But Opal couldn't help wincing when he reached across to carefully roll up her sleeve. His hands were warm, his touch clinical as he examined the wooden splinter embedded in her arm. Anton, Gabriel spoke to the driver. Call ahead. Have Dr. Marcus waiting. He kept his grip gentle on her wrist, his thumb absently stroking her pulse point. The wound needs cleaning before it infects. Opal tried to focus on practical concerns instead of how his simple touch sent sparks along her skin. My apartment will be cleared out by my people. Nothing left for them to find. He released her wrist but stayed closer than before. Your bank accounts will be frozen, your rental agreement terminated. As far as the world is concerned, Opal Hayes disappears tonight. That's not your decision to make. Despite her fear, anger flared. You can't just erase my entire life. No? Something dangerous flickered in his expression. Then tell me your plan for surviving when every criminal organization in the city starts hunting the woman who interfered in a hit on Gabriel Santoro. The woman who proves she's either very brave or very foolish. Both qualities that make you valuable to my enemies. The SUV turned onto a quiet street lined with historic brownstones. Opal's heart pounded as she realized they were in the prestigious Heights district. I could leave town, she offered weakly. Gabriel's laugh held no humor. They would find you. But under my protection, you live. More than live, you thrive. His eyes traveled over her face, lingering on her lips before meeting her gaze. I protect what's mine, Opal. And you became mine the moment you put yourself between me and those bullets. I'm nobody's possession, she said, but her voice wavered at his intensity. No, he agreed, surprising her. You're under my protection, not my ownership. There's a difference. He leaned back, giving her space to breathe. You'll have your own suite in my home, security when you want to go out, resources to pursue any venture you choose. The SUV slowed, turning through wrought iron gates that opened silently. Opal caught glimpses of manicured gardens before they stopped before a mansion that managed to be both elegant and fortress-like. "And if I refuse?" she asked, though they both knew she couldn't. Gabriel's expression softened fractionally. "You won't. You're practical enough to recognize the situation." He opened his door, then reached for her hand. "Come, let's get that arm treated, then we'll discuss how to build you a new life, one where you never have to count tips to make rent again." Opal placed her hand in his, trying to ignore how perfectly it fit. As he helped her from the vehicle, the mansion's lights cast his features in dramatic shadows. He looked dangerous, powerful, everything she should fear. But his thumb brushed soothingly across her knuckles, and she remembered how he'd touched her wound with such care. "I still need to work," she said firmly. "Cooking isn't just my job, it's who I am." "Then you'll cook," he replied simply. "But on your terms, not because you're desperate for the next paycheck." His eyes held hers. "I don't cage what I protect, Opal. I give it room to flourish." She wanted to argue more, but exhaustion hit her like a wave. The night's events, the shooting, the blood, the way her whole life had shattered in minutes, suddenly felt overwhelming. Gabriel must have noticed because his arm slipped around her waist, supporting but not constraining. "One step at a time," he murmured. "First, we heal your wound. Then you rest. Tomorrow is soon enough to face the rest." As they climbed the mansion's steps, Opal tried not to lean into his strength. She had a feeling she'd need every ounce of independence to survive in Gabriel Santoro's world. But with his warm hand steady at her back and the memory of those bullets singing past her ears, she knew she'd already made her choice the moment she'd pushed him to safety. The safe room's steel walls made every sound sharper, the medic's latex gloves snapping, the security chief's tablet stylus clicking, Gabriel's measured footsteps as he paced behind Opal's chair. She winced as the medic dabbed antiseptic on her arm where the wooden splinter had gouged her. "Target acquired within 60 minutes of incident," the security chief reported, sliding surveillance photos across the table. "Your image hit 3 known channels used by rival families. Professional quality, likely taken with night vision equipment." Opal's stomach churned as she studied her own face, lit orange by the road flare she'd thrown. "They were ready for this, waiting to film whoever helped him." "Correct." Gabriel stopped pacing. His presence felt like a gravitational pull at her back. "Which means the hit was orchestrated by someone who knew my schedule, someone who wanted leverage beyond a simple assassination." The medic finished bandaging her arm and packed away his supplies. Dawn painted the Manhattan skyline outside the reinforced windows, but Opal felt nothing but exhaustion. Her phone sat dark and dead on the table. Gabriel's men had disabled it the moment they left the pier. "I need to go home," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "My clients, my equipment." "Your van is being followed." Gabriel tapped the wall screen, bringing up live traffic camera feeds. A dark SUV shadowed her catering van through Brooklyn streets. "They're waiting for you to return to known locations." "So what's your solution? Keep me prisoner here?" The words came out sharper than intended, but fear made her defensive. Gabriel's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. "I'm offering protection and compensation while we identify the threat. You saved my life. I won't repay that by caging you. But I can't leave. Not until we know who's hunting you, no." He sat across from her, his movements deliberately non-threatening. "It's easier to secure one location than multiple ones. You'll have your own space here, complete privacy, and whatever resources you need." Opal straightened her spine. "I want terms. Written ones." A ghost of approval crossed his face. "Name them." "My own room with a lock I control, access to a kitchen, cooking keeps me sane, no surveillance inside my private spaces." She met his gaze steadily. "And I want everything in writing, including how long this arrangement lasts and what support you're offering." The security chief shifted uncomfortably, but Gabriel nodded. "Reasonable requests. I'll have papers drawn up within the hour." He slid a slim black card across the table. 4 immediate necessities. My staff will escort you to purchase clothing and personal items. "I need to contact my landlord," Opal said. "If I disappear without notice, they'll clear out my apartment." "Use our secure line. Tell them you've taken an extended catering contract." He gestured to a phone on the wall. "The call will be monitored, but you can speak freely about non-security matters." The next hours passed in a blur of practical arrangements. Gabriel's efficiency both impressed and unnerved her. By noon, she had signed protection agreements, toured her designated spaces in the penthouse, and been escorted to buy essential supplies. Her new room was larger than her entire apartment, with views that made her dizzy and sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But as evening settled over the city, bringing with it the soft whir of engaging security systems, Opal lay awake, listening to Gabriel's voice through the wall. His tone was too low to make out words, but she caught phrases about elevator shaft inspections and roof access protocols. "Sir, this level's clear," a guard reported in the hallway. "Biometrics are active on all entry points." "Double the overnight patrols," Gabriel replied. "I want eyes on every approach." Opal turned onto her side, running her fingers over the bandage on her arm. The wound barely hurt now, but the reality of her situation ached deeper. In one night, she'd lost her home, her business connections, her independence. Yet when she closed her eyes, she still saw the gunman's face illuminated by her flare, still felt the surge of desperate protectiveness that had made her sprint toward danger instead of away. Through the wall, Gabriel continued issuing orders, his voice a steady reminder of both threat and safety. She'd seen him shoot without hesitation, seen the cold calculation in his eyes as he'd assessed the attack, but she'd also seen how carefully he'd examined her wound, how he'd honored every boundary she'd set today. The city lights cast patterns on her ceiling through bulletproof glass. Somewhere out there, someone was hunting her, waiting for her to make a mistake. But here in this fortress of steel and security, Gabriel's low voice continued its quiet vigil. And despite everything, Opal felt her muscles slowly uncoiling. She hadn't asked to be part of this dangerous world, hadn't wanted to trade her hard-won independence for gilded protection. But as she drifted toward uneasy sleep, she remembered the weight of Gabriel's gaze when he'd promised to keep her safe. Whatever game was being played, whatever target had been painted on her back, at least she wasn't facing it alone. The biometric locks hummed, sealing them all into their separate spaces for the night. Through the wall, Gabriel's voice finally fell silent. Opal pulled the obscenely soft duvet tighter around her shoulders and tried not to think about how many lives had changed course in the split second she'd chosen to save one dangerous man's life. The sunrise painted gold streaks across the penthouse kitchen as Opal measured coffee grounds. Her hands needed something to do, and cooking had always been her sanctuary. The industrial-grade appliances gleamed, promising familiar comfort in this strange new reality. She whisked cinnamon into egg mixture, the repetitive motion soothing her nerves. 2 security guards lingered by the entrance, trying not to look obvious about watching her. The least she could do was feed them. "You're up early." Gabriel's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him in a black dress shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal bruised knuckles. "Couldn't sleep past 6? She gestured to the coffee pot. "There's plenty." He moved to the counter and she noticed how he positioned himself to keep both exits in view. The morning light caught his face, softening the sharp angles. "You didn't have to cook." "I need normal right now, and your security team looks hungry." His lips quirked as he poured coffee. "They're supposed to look alert, not hungry." Opal reached for a mixing bowl, but it slipped through her fingers. Gabriel caught it before it shattered, then surprised her by walking it to the sink. He washed it methodically, his movements precise. "We need to establish parameters," he said, drying the bowl. "For your safety." She folded her arms. "Let me guess, I'm trapped here?" "Not trapped, protected." He set the bowl down carefully. "No unescorted exits, no social media posts that could reveal your location, and to maintain your cover story, you'll be our in-house chef." "I'm not going to be your kept woman." His jaw tightened. "That's not what I'm suggesting. You'll be compensated as a professional contractor." "In writing," she said firmly. "Like everything else." He nodded, pulled out his phone, and within minutes his lawyer had emailed an addendum. Gabriel signed it on his tablet while she watched. The morning passed in a haze of cooking and careful conversation. Around noon, Opal was organizing the pantry when a news alert chimed on the kitchen tablet. Her hands shook as she read the headline. "Fire destroys Brooklyn commissary kitchen." Photos showed the blackened shell of her workspace, the shared kitchen where she'd built her catering business. The article mentioned witnesses spotting an unidentified employee at a recent waterfront shooting. The tablet clattered to the counter. Even if she wanted to leave Gabriel's protection, she had nowhere to go. Her equipment, her client contacts, her reputation, all gone up in smoke. "I'm sorry," Gabriel said from the doorway. She hadn't heard him approach. "They burned down my whole life." Her voice cracked. "My mixers, my recipes, everything. We'll replace it all." "That's not the point." She pressed her palms against the cool marble. "They didn't just take my freedom. They took my ability to start over." He moved closer, careful to telegraph his movements. "The people hunting you are methodical. They're eliminating your options to force you into the open. Well, it worked. She laughed bitterly. I'm officially trapped here now. You're safe here, he corrected gently. Needing to keep her hands busy, Opal started preparing cupcakes for the night shift guards. The familiar motions of measuring and mixing helped steady her nerves. By late afternoon, she was piping delicate swirls of buttercream, losing herself in the precision work. A red dot appeared on the marble beside her hand. Before she could process what it meant, Gabriel slammed into her, driving them both behind the kitchen island. Two sharp cracks split the air as he fired through the window. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed to life. Metal blinds crashed down over the broken window. Opal's heart hammered against her ribs as Gabriel pressed her against the cabinets, shielding her with his body. Status! He barked into his comm. No visual on the shooter, his security chief reported. But sir, that shot came from an impossible angle. Someone's gotten access to internal vantage points. Gabriel's face went cold. Lock down the private elevator, now. He kept one arm braced protectively across Opal as he scanned the kitchen. That shot shouldn't have been possible from any external position. Opal's hands trembled against his chest. Frosting from her piping bag had splattered across his shirt, pink buttercream stark against black fabric. The surreal detail made her want to laugh hysterically. Someone's inside your security, she whispered. His expression hardened. Yes. Teams of guards swarmed the kitchen, weapons drawn. Gabriel didn't move from his protective stance over her as he issued rapid orders through his comm. The alarms continued their piercing wail. Opal closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. The marble was cold against her back, but Gabriel radiated heat where he pressed against her. She could feel his heartbeat, perfectly controlled despite everything. I need to move you to a secure room, he said quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. As guards formed a perimeter around them, she caught a glimpse of her abandoned cupcakes. Buttercream melting, sprinkles scattered across the floor like tiny casualties. The private elevator whirred as its emergency locks engaged. Somewhere in the building, someone who shouldn't have access was watching, waiting. The realization that threats could come from inside Gabriel's fortress made her stomach clench. His hand found her elbow, steadying her as they moved. Despite his calm exterior, she felt the tension thrumming through him. Someone had breached his security, threatened what was his to protect. The bruises on his knuckles suddenly made more sense. He'd already been fighting shadows before dawn. More guards arrived, sweeping the kitchen with practiced efficiency. But Opal couldn't shake the feeling that they were all being watched, measured, assessed through crosshairs they couldn't see. The penthouse hummed with activity as security teams swept every floor. Technicians huddled over laptops, faces lit by scrolling code as they combed through access logs. Gabriel stood like a statue, watching their progress with cold focus. Sir, one tech looked up, face grim. The elevator override came from a senior clearance code. Gabriel's mouth flattened into a hard line. Show me. Opal watched from her position near the kitchen door, flanked by two guards. The tech turned his screen, displaying rows of timestamps and authorization codes. She couldn't read the data, but Gabriel's reaction told her enough. Someone high in his organization had betrayed him. We move before nightfall, he announced, voice carrying across the room. The next attempt will be worse. He crossed to Opal, lowering his voice. I have an estate in Connecticut, more secure, fewer access points, trusted staff only. And how do you explain my presence there? She asked. Won't a strange woman living in your house raise questions? We craft a cover story. His eyes held hers steadily. You'll pose as my fiancé. It gives you freedom to move without constant explanation, and no one questions a man protecting his future wife. She blinked, processing the implications. That's actually smart, but it needs to be believable. When did we meet? How long have we been together? The Morton Foundation Gala, 6 weeks ago. I was actually there. A ghost of approval crossed his face at her practical approach. You were catering. We talked about Italian wine regions. I asked for your number. And I gave it because you knew the difference between Barolo and Barbaresco, she added, building the story. Fast engagement, but not impossible given your position. He nodded. Pack what you need. We leave in 30 minutes. The drive took hours through worsening traffic. Opal forced herself to nap, knowing she needed rest, but her dreams were filled with muzzle flashes and shattering glass. She woke with a start as they passed through heavy gates. Twilight painted the sky purple as they pulled up to a sprawling stone mansion. The estate manager, a silver-haired woman named Mrs. Harrison, met them at the door with barely concealed skepticism. "The East Wing is prepared, Mr. Santoro, though this is unexpected." Gabriel's voice carried the weight of command. "Miss Hayes' safety is now this household's primary concern. Any resources she needs, any security measures required, those are your first priority." Mrs. Harrison's demeanor shifted instantly to crisp efficiency. "Of course, sir! Miss Hayes, if you'll follow me." They toured the wing quickly, a luxurious suite with adjoining rooms separated by a dressing area. 2 heavy doors with prominent locks faced each other across the space. "The doors lock from both sides," Gabriel explained. "Your room is yours alone. If you need me urgently, text red. For non-emergencies, yellow. Green means all clear." Opal nodded, grateful for the clear system. "And you'll do the same?" "Yes. No one enters without warning, including me." Mrs. Harrison arranged for a light dinner to be sent up, but Opal's nerves wouldn't let her eat. She wandered to the library instead, hoping to distract herself with cookbooks. The leather chaise by the window looked out over moonlit gardens, and she curled up with a vintage French pastry manual. The familiar recipes should have been soothing, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every shadow in the garden looked like a threat. The words blurred as exhaustion caught up with her. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, strong arms were lifting her carefully. Through half-closed eyes, she saw Gabriel's profile, sharp in the dim light. He carried her with surprising gentleness, pushing her door open with his shoulder. The bed was already turned down. He laid her on the cool sheets, removing her shoes with efficient care. The blanket settled over her as sleep pulled her under again. Through the fog of near dreams, she felt his hand brush her hair back from her face. Then footsteps retreated, and the door clicked shut with a final, quiet sound. Security teams patrolled the grounds outside her window. Somewhere in the house, Gabriel was probably still working, hunting the traitor who had compromised his organization. But here in this room, with moonlight painting silver stripes across her bed, Opal finally let herself relax into true sleep. The estate settled around her, ancient stone walls holding their secrets. In the dressing room between their suites, 2 doors stood locked but not barred, a boundary and a bridge, marking the space between protection and possession, between the roles they played for others and whatever truth was growing in the quiet moments between them. Mrs. Harrison had arranged fresh flowers on the bedside table, their sweet scent mixing with the leather and wood polish that seemed to permeate the house. Such a normal, civilized touch in a situation that was anything but normal. Opal's last conscious thought was that she should thank the woman in the morning. Outside, crickets sang in the garden. Inside, silent cameras watched empty hallways, and guards made their rounds with practiced precision. And in his own room, Gabriel sat at his desk, satellite phone against his ear as he issued quiet orders to teams searching for the traitor who had dared to breach his inner circle. The night wrapped around the estate like a velvet cloak, hiding whatever wheels were turning in the darkness. But for now, in this moment, Opal slept peacefully in her borrowed bed, while the man who had promised to protect her kept his vigil on the other side of the wall. Morning sunlight spilled across the terrace's stone tiles as Opal whisked eggs in a large steel bowl. The kitchen felt like sanctuary. Gleaming counters, professional-grade equipment, and enough space to breathe. She folded fresh herbs into the egg mixture, the familiar motions steadying her hands. The skeleton staff moved through their morning routines, casting curious glances her way. She understood their wariness. She was an outsider, an unknown variable in their carefully controlled world. "Does anyone have dietary restrictions?" she asked, keeping her voice light as she poured the egg mixture into a hot pan. A young guard cleared his throat. "Thompson's lactose intolerant, ma'am." "Perfect, this frittata's dairy-free." She pulled a tray of lemon muffins from the oven, their citrus scent filling the air. "And these are vegan, just in case." The staff's posture softened slightly as she served them. Good food had a way of breaking down barriers. She was plating the last portion when Gabriel strode in, suit jacket absent. White shirt sleeves rolled to reveal fresh bruising across his knuckles. "You should see the other guy," she offered, earning a ghost of a smile. "First aid kit. Under the sink. Sit." She pointed to a stool, surprised when he actually complied. The kitchen staff disappeared with practiced discretion. She cleaned his split knuckles with gentle efficiency, conscious of his intense focus. His eyes tracked every movement like she was some rare creature he couldn't quite categorize. "You've done this before," he observed. "My ex." She hesitated, then pushed forward. "He had a gambling problem, bad temper when he lost. I got good at patch-up jobs." Gabriel's free hand clenched. He hurt you? Not directly. Mostly he hurt himself. Our savings, my credit score. She applied antibiotic cream with careful strokes. Though I did get this from him. She touched a thin scar near her hairline. He was drunk, knocked me off balance. I hit the corner of a table. Where is he now? Dead. Car accident 2 years ago. He was driving to Atlantic City, trying to win back what he'd lost. She wrapped the gauze with practiced turns. I spent 18 months paying off his debts. Gabriel caught her wrist as she finished, his touch surprisingly gentle. My father believed hunger built character, he said, voice tight. 3 days without food was his favorite lesson in discipline. The admission hung between them, heavy with shared understanding of different kinds of deprivation. Under my roof, he said slowly. You will never go hungry. Never be shamed for taking what you need. The promise felt weighted with more meaning than just food. Opal nodded, unable to speak past the thickness in her throat. The day settled into a rhythm. She planned menus, cataloged pantry stock, and tested recipes while security teams rotated shifts. By evening, she had covered a counter with sample dishes for staff meals, hearty soups, protein-rich salads, energy-dense snacks that could be eaten on the move. She was arranging fresh flowers in crystal vases, adding color to the formal dining room when something caught her eye, a tiny glint, almost hidden in the roses. Frowning, she pulled the bouquet apart, stem by stem. A small black cylinder dropped into her palm, still warm to the touch. A camera lens, barely bigger than her thumbnail. Her hands shook as she called Gabriel. He materialized within minutes, face hardening as he examined the device. How did you spot it? The light hit it wrong. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't been rearranging the flowers. His security chief arrived with scanning equipment. Activated this morning, sir, after 800. After she'd arrived, after she'd started cooking. Someone had watched her feed the staff. 10 Gabriel's wounds. Share their stories. Gabriel's voice was deadly quiet. Begin rotation procedures. Essential personnel only. Full background rechecks. He turned to Opal. Someone you served breakfast to could be our traitor. She thought of the quiet guard who'd mentioned Thompson's dietary needs, the housekeeper who'd thanked her for the muffins, the groundskeeper who'd brought in fresh herbs for her frittata. Any of them could have planted the camera while accepting food from her hands. The evening light turned golden across the terrace where she'd started her day. In the kitchen, half-finished test dishes sat abandoned as security teams began their silent sweep of the house. Gabriel stood at the window, shoulders rigid with contained violence, while Opal watched the staff she'd tried to nurture file passed for questioning. The camera sat on the table between them, a tiny eye that had witnessed their moment of shared vulnerability. Someone had watched her bind Gabriel's wounds, had seen him let down his guard. Someone had observed their quiet exchange of trust and decided to use it against them. The roses she'd arranged lay scattered across the table, their sweetness turned sour by betrayal. She tried to make this place feel more like home, and someone had weaponized even that simple act of care. Gabriel's eyes were storm dark as he issued orders for the rotation, his earlier gentleness buried beneath layers of tactical necessity. But when he caught her looking at the disassembled flowers, something softened in his expression. We'll find them, he said quietly. They won't take this from you. Opal wasn't sure what this meant, her safety, her growing sense of purpose, or the delicate trust building between them. But she nodded, gathering the fallen roses with steady hands. She wouldn't let fear poison everything she touched. She'd survived one man's destructive patterns. She would survive this betrayal too. The camera lens gleamed dully in the fading light, its secret audience now exposed. Somewhere in the house, someone who had eaten her food and accepted her care was watching their world unravel. But they hadn't counted on her attention to detail, her instinct for things out of place. They hadn't counted on her at all. The side parlor felt smaller with each security interview. Opal sat quietly beside Gabriel, watching faces she'd greeted just yesterday now shift under scrutiny. Her notebook filled with red flags to monitor, maintenance crews arriving off schedule, duplicate supply orders, staff lingering in restricted zones. And radio checks? The head of security demonstrated proper response patterns. Copy that, over, Opal repeated, earning an approving nod. The door burst open. A man in a rumpled suit clutched a tablet, his tie askew. Sir, we found something. Gabriel's posture changed subtly, a predator scenting blood. Report. Financial anomalies in Rocco Vale's accounts, shell companies linking back to the Castellano syndicate, and his phone. The analyst swallowed hard. It pinged near the Brooklyn Pier that night. He had the clearance to access those elevator codes too. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Gabriel's fury manifested not in violence, but in absolute stillness, like a cobra poised to strike. He didn't dismiss Opal from the room, a trust that made her sit straighter. "Show me everything," Gabriel ordered. Spreadsheets and surveillance photos filled the screens. Rocco Vale, a Lieutenant Opal had seen briefly at the penthouse, had been laundering money through ghost corporations for months. The analyst traced payments that coincided with security breaches, including the night she'd saved Gabriel's life. When the room cleared, Gabriel's controlled rage finally leaked through. "Removing Rocco means reorganizing half my operation. The chaos will make you an even more valuable target, proof that my inner circle is vulnerable." "So flip the script," Opal said. "Instead of hiding me away, make me unpredictable. Train me to spot threats myself." He studied her, weighing options. "You understand the risk." "I understand sitting still makes me an easier target." That evening, Gabriel led her to the back gardens for practical training. The air held Autumn's bite as he demonstrated how to identify surveillance. People who matched your pace, cars that turned when you turned, reflective surfaces that could hide cameras. "Walk the long way, around doorways," he instructed. "It gives you time to assess threats." His hand ghosted over her lower back, guiding her through the motion. "And never argue about taking cover. Drop first, debate later." The lesson became an intimate dance of trust. He never raised his voice when she made mistakes, never showed frustration when she needed multiple attempts. Instead, he adjusted his teaching style to match her learning patterns. More demonstration for physical skills. Clear explanations for technical details. "Good," he murmured when she spotted a deliberately planted training camera. "You're picking this up faster than most." Hours passed. Security lights cast long shadows across the lawn as they practiced emergency protocols and escape routes. Gabriel's patience never wavered, even when Opal's arms trembled from repeatedly drawing and holstering an unloaded pistol. "Enough for tonight," he finally said. "You're doing well, but muscle memory takes time." Opal nodded, stretching her shoulders. "Thank you for teaching me instead of just locking me away." Something softened in his expression. "You've earned the right to protect yourself." Near midnight, Opal stepped onto her balcony, seeking cool air to clear her head. The training session had left her mentally and physically drained, but more confident. She understood now why Gabriel moved with such deliberate grace. Every motion served a purpose, every angle considered for tactical advantage. The night air raised goosebumps on her arms. Before she could retreat inside, she felt Gabriel's jacket settle over her shoulders, still warm from his body. He'd appeared silently behind her, close enough that his presence felt like a shield. "I can be a monster to anyone who tries to touch you," he murmured, voice low and intense. "But I won't be one to you." The promise wrapped around her like his jacket, offering protection without cage bars. She turned to face him, reading the truth in his eyes. This dangerous man who could order deaths with a nod was showing her his gentler edges, trusting her not to use them against him, just as she trusted him not to use his power against her. His jacket smelled of gunpowder and expensive cologne, an oddly comforting combination. She drew it closer, watching shadows play across his face. In the darkness, his usual masks slipped just enough to reveal the complexity beneath. The violence he capable of, carefully leashed when he looked at her. The balcony became their own private world, suspended between sky and earth. Training had forged a new intimacy between them, built on shared purpose rather than forced proximity. He'd shown her how to guard her life. She'd shown him she could be an ally rather than a liability. The night wrapped around them like a cloak, holding this moment of quiet understanding. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. Rocco's betrayal to address, security to reorganize, threats to neutralize. But tonight, they stood together in comfortable silence, neither monster nor victim, but two people finding unexpected trust in dangerous times. Gabriel's jacket settled on her shoulders like armor, its weight a reminder that protection could come without possession. The cool air carried distant sounds of security patrols, but here in their shared space, the only monster was the one he controlled for her sake. Opal's hands didn't shake as she threaded the curved needle. Late afternoon sun slanted through the clinic. Windows, catching dust motes and the bright red drops falling from Gabriel's shoulder. He'd stumbled in minutes ago, jaw clenched against pain, while his security team reported a riverfront meeting gone wrong. The staff medic fumbled another suture kit, hands trembling. "Sir, I can—" "Let me," Opal said quietly. She'd stitched enough kitchen cuts to know her way around wound care. "Your hands are shaking." Gabriel's eyes met hers, sharp despite the pain. "You're sure?" "I'm steady." She pulled on latex gloves and approached the exam table where he sat, bare-chested and bleeding. The knife slash ran 4 inches across his shoulder, clean but deep. "This needs internal stitches first," she said, reaching for the antiseptic. "I'll be gentle, but it'll hurt." He caught her wrist before she could start, his grip careful despite his strength. "May I?" he asked. And something in her chest tightened at how he still sought permission while bleeding. She nodded. His fingers slid away, leaving warmth behind. Working methodically, she cleaned the wound and placed the first careful stitch. Gabriel didn't flinch, but she felt the tension in his muscles. The medic hovered nearby, watching her technique with growing respect. "Almost done," she murmured, starting the external sutures. Her fingers brushed his skin, and electricity crackled between them. Gabriel turned his head, bringing their faces close. His breath caught. For a heartbeat, they stayed frozen in that charged moment. Then his hand cupped her cheek, and she leaned in. The first kiss tasted like adrenaline and the cinnamon rolls she'd baked that morning. Heat bloomed where their lips met, spreading like wildfire through her veins. His good arm wrapped around her waist, drawing her closer. She threaded fingers through his hair, careful not to jar his injured shoulder. The kiss deepened, months of tension igniting. Opal pulled back first, breathing hard. Gabriel's eyes were dark with want, but he didn't chase her retreat. "If you want me," she whispered, "you have to choose something soft, and keep choosing it." Understanding flickered across his face. He brushed a thumb across her lower lip, then let his hand fall. "Finish the stitches?" She did, hands still steady despite her racing pulse. When she tied off the last suture, he caught her fingers and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. They spent the next day in careful orbit. Opal threw herself into baking, producing trays of pastries for the staff, while trying not to think about the taste of Gabriel's mouth. He worked the phones, handling fallout from the riverfront fight, but his gaze found her whenever they shared space. The tension hummed between them, electric and unresolved. She caught him watching as she kneaded bread dough, his eyes tracking the movement of her hands. He leaned in close while reviewing security protocols, his cologne making her dizzy. Then everything shifted. A security analyst burst in, tablet displaying traffic camera. Footage. "Sir, we have a problem." The screen showed Opal's van at the Brooklyn Pier, but something was wrong with the plates. As they watched, the numbers flickered and changed. "Digital spoofing," the analyst explained. "Someone altered the footage to make it look like she led you there deliberately. The rumor's already spreading that she was the honey trap." Opal's stomach dropped. "I would never—" "I know," Gabriel cut in, voice hard with certainty. He believed her without hesitation, and warmth bloomed in her chest, but his next words were ice cold. "Assign Ms. Hayes a new security detail. I want eyes on her at all times." She understood what he was doing, playing into the trap to flush out whoever said it. But the sudden distance in his voice still stung. He turned away, speaking into his phone. "Double the patrols. No one gets within 50 feet of her without clearance." 2 staffers exchanged suspicious looks as they passed the doorway. Opal forced herself to stay composed, to play the role of someone under increased scrutiny rather than increased protection. Gabriel strode past without acknowledging her, every line of his body radiating controlled anger. But as he reached the far end of the hall, he gave her the smallest nod, a tiny gesture that said he was acting for the cameras, not his heart. Opal straightened her spine and walked the other direction, feeling those suspicious stares follow her. She understood the game they were playing, but understanding didn't make it easier to bear. The memory of his kiss burned on her lips as she listened to his footsteps fade away. The estate suddenly felt colder, emptier. Security cameras tracked her movement, but now their presence felt hostile rather than protective. She wanted to run back to the clinic room, to that moment when everything was simple, need and trust. Instead, she walked slowly toward the kitchen, where she would bake and clean and pretend her heart wasn't aching. She would play her part in this deception, knowing it was necessary to smoke out the real threat. But she kept the memory of that nod close, a promise that this distance was temporary, that somewhere between violence and tenderness, they would find their way back to that honest moment when his lips met hers and the world narrowed to nothing but shared breath and possibility. The smell of cinnamon still lingered in the air, a reminder of choices yet to be made. Soft ones, hard ones, and all the complex decisions that lay between a first kiss and whatever came next. Opal folded another sweater into her overnight bag, movements sharp with frustration. The estate's heavy silence pressed against her shoulders as evening light filtered through the suite's windows. She wasn't running, just retreating to regroup. Pride demanded some distance while the staff's suspicious glances burned holes in her back. The guest wing would do until this performance convinced whoever was watching that she and Gabriel were truly at odds. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Hayes?" One of the security team stood at her door. "Courier at the service entrance, delivery for you." She followed him downstairs, where a white funeral arrangement waited on the receiving table. Lilies and chrysanthemums spilled from a marble vase, their sweet scent cloying in the enclosed space. A cream envelope nestled among the blooms. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. 3 words in flowing script. "Return what you took." "I need Gabriel," she said quietly. The guard was already on his phone. Gabriel appeared within minutes, expression thunderous, as he read the note. "What exactly do they think you have?" "Nothing." Opal ran her fingers through her hair. "But what if something was planted? To make it look like I took something?" Understanding flickered in his eyes. They tore through her rooms methodically, her half-packed suitcase, the dresser drawers, even the bathroom cabinets. Gabriel called in a tech team to scan the vent grates and light fixtures, while Opal searched every corner of her kitchen station. Nothing. Hours later, they regrouped in his study. Opal paced while Gabriel tracked her movement, his shoulders tense. "They're trying to isolate you," he said finally. "Make everyone doubt you so you're vulnerable." "Then let's use it." Opal stopped pacing. "Host an engagement party here this weekend. Make it public. Invite everyone who matters. If they think I have leverage over you, they'll come close to verify it." "Absolutely not." His voice went flat. "You're not bait." "I'm already bait." She met his gaze steadily. "But I can be bait on my terms. I'm not porcelain, Gabriel. I choose this knowing the danger." He studied her for a long moment, jaw working. Then he crossed to a wooden box on his desk and withdrew a ring. Platinum and sapphires, clearly an heirloom. "My grandmother's," he said quietly. "If we're doing this, we do it right." The ring slid onto her finger, a perfect fit. A tech appeared with delicate tools, carefully lifting the center stone to embed a micro beacon underneath. "Range is 1/2 mile, the woman explained, replacing the sapphire. "Signal penetrates most materials. If anything happens, we'll find you." Opal flexed her hand, testing the weight. "We need a good story. Something that explains both the secrecy and the sudden announcement." Gabriel nodded. "We reconnected after the charity gala, kept it quiet because your aunt was in hospice," Opal finished. "You didn't want to overshadow her final days with relationship news. That's why there are no social media posts, no public dates." "Good." He paced the room. "We need signals, ways to communicate in a crowd without being obvious." They spent the next hour developing a silent code. His hand on her lower back meant danger. Her touching his watch meant she needed extraction. Adjusting his cufflinks warned of a suspicious conversation. Running fingers through her hair indicated she'd spotted surveillance. "The party gives us 3 days to prepare," Gabriel said, studying blueprints of the estate grounds. "We'll need to control access points, screen the catering staff, sweep for devices. I'll handle the menu planning." Opal was already making mental lists. "It needs to be elaborate enough to justify outside help, but simple enough that I can supervise every station." "You don't have to." "I do." She touched his arm. "Normal couples share the work, and I need to know every person who touches the food." He covered her hand with his, thumb brushing over the ring. For a moment, the weight of what they were planning settled between them. The calculated risk, the deliberate exposure, the thin line between performance and truth. 3 days, she murmured. "Think your staff will buy our reconciliation that fast?" "They'll believe I couldn't stay angry at my fiancé." His voice roughened on the last word. "Especially when she's been nothing but an asset since she arrived." Opal squeezed his hand, then stepped back. They had roles to play, starting now. She gathered the party planning materials with efficient movements while Gabriel returned to his security schematics. But as she reached the door, he spoke again. "Opal, leave the bag unpacked. Stay in your suite." She nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. They were stronger together, even if together was currently a careful performance. The enemy had tried to drive a wedge between them. They wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Back in her rooms, Opal hung up the sweater she'd folded earlier. The funeral bouquet had been destroyed and tested for toxins, but its message lingered. "Return what you took." The words felt like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. She touched the ring, feeling the slight warmth where the beacon nestled beneath the stone. In 3 days, they would gather Gabriel's world into one space and wait for the trap to spring. But whose trap? Theirs or their enemies'? The evening light had faded to purple dusk. Somewhere in the estate, Gabriel was mobilizing resources, spreading the word of their engagement, laying groundwork for their performance. Their signal system felt like a secret language, intimate despite its practical purpose. Opal checked her reflection, practicing the soft smile of a woman newly engaged. It wasn't entirely an act. Under the fear and calculation lay something real, a trust built in small moments between violence and tenderness. She had chosen this, chosen him, chosen the danger that came with both. Now they would face it together, whether the enemy believed their performance or not. The afternoon sun slanted across polished floors as final preparations transformed the estate into a glittering showcase. String quartet musicians drew bows across strings, testing acoustics in the grand hall. Outside, security teams led bomb-sniffing dogs through a procession of catering trucks, checking every container and corner. Opal stood, before her sweet mirror, smoothing the midnight blue silk that draped her curves like water. The dress had appeared that morning, Gabriel's gift, with a note saying simply, "Be yourself." She'd fought tears at the gesture, at how the tailoring celebrated, rather than disguised her shape. A knock preceded Gabriel's entrance. He stopped mid-stride, his expression shifting from controlled to something darker, hungrier. "You're beautiful," he said roughly. "The dress helps." She touched the sapphire ring, now a familiar weight. "The dress is irrelevant." His eyes hadn't left her. "You're magnificent." Staff members hurried past the open door, their whispers changing tone. Gone were the suspicious glances and judgmental murmurs. Now they watched her with something like respect, even admiration. "They're starting to believe," she murmured. "Good." Gabriel adjusted his cufflinks, their signal for noted surveillance. "Stay close tonight." The first guests arrived at sunset. Opal played her role perfectly, greeting old money families and crime lords alike with the same warm smile. Gabriel kept her at his side, his hand protective at her lower back. When Marco Castellano, head of the rival syndicate, sauntered in, the air grew sharp with tension. He kissed Opal's cheek, lingering too long. "What a charming surprise," he purred, raising his champagne. "Though I hear some property has gone missing lately, valuable items changing hands without permission." Opal's skin crawled as she remembered the funeral flowers. "Return what you took." But she kept her smile steady, even as Gabriel's fingers tightened on her waist. "I'm sure anything truly valuable finds its way home eventually," she replied smoothly. The string quartet struck up a waltz. Guests filled the dance floor, crystal glasses catching the warm light. Gabriel guided her through the steps, his touch grounding her as cameras flashed and conversations swirled. At precisely 9 o'clock, the house lights flickered, their planned test of the backup systems. But when the power died completely, plunging the hall into darkness, Opal's pulse spiked. This wasn't part of the script. Gunshots cracked through the garden darkness, glass shattered, screams erupted as guests stampeded for cover. Emergency protocols activated, security teams moving with practiced efficiency. A hand seized Opal's arm, yanking her toward the service corridor. She started to fight until a familiar voice hissed, "Move!" Rocco Vale's face was twisted with desperation in the emergency strobes. He shoved her against the wall, blocking her escape with his body. "Where is it?" he demanded. "The flash drive you lifted that night at the pier." "What are you talking about? I didn't take anything." "Don't lie," spittle flew from his lips. "You were there early, watching. You must have found where I dropped it." Understanding dawned. "You set up the ambush. You filmed me." He laughed, high and unstable. "Doesn't matter now, but since you're playing dumb, here's the truth. I stashed the drive somewhere you'll take the fall for. That cookbook you're always using in the penthouse kitchen? The one with the hollow spine? I pulled it this afternoon." Opal's mind raced. The missing cookbook would have her fingerprints all over it. Combined with the doctored traffic footage, it would look like she'd been working with Rocco all along. "You're insane," she spat. "Gabriel will never believe—" "He won't have a choice once Castellano's men find it. Now tell me where you moved it." When she only glared, his hand shot toward her throat. But Opal was done being a victim. She drove her heel into his instep with all her strength. Rocco howled, stumbling back. Opal bolted past him as alarms wailed through the corridors, emergency lights painting everything in crimson pulses. Behind her, she heard him cursing, his footsteps giving chase as she ran into the chaos. Opal's heels clicked against marble as she sprinted through service corridors, her silk dress whispering with each stride. The kitchen staging area loomed ahead, emergency lights casting crimson shadows across stainless steel surfaces. Her heart dropped when she saw the cookbook display shelf, stripped bare, exactly as she'd feared. Rocco had thought ahead, removing any evidence of his plan. "Damn it," she muttered, ducking behind a prep table. She kicked off her heels and pulled out the ballet flats she'd hidden there earlier, a safety measure that now felt like foresight. How had she missed the missing cookbook during prep? She'd been so focused on the party, on playing her role perfectly, that she'd overlooked the detail that mattered most. With trembling fingers, she typed out the emergency code they'd agreed on. Kitchen bound. R. Sherry. Traitor. Item moved. The sapphire ring felt heavy on her finger, its hidden beacon broadcasting her location to Gabriel's phone. She had to trust he would understand, would know where to find her. Through the kitchen windows, she could see the ballroom. Marco Castellano prowled between frightened guests, his smile too wide, too hungry. He looked like a man waiting for his trap to spring. Gabriel's security team moved with practiced efficiency, herding people toward reinforced safe rooms under the guise of standard protocol. "Ma'am," a young voice quavered behind her. Opal turned to find Tommy, one of the catering staff, hovering nervously by the dish station. His eyes kept darting to the exit, guilt written across his face. "Tommy." She kept her voice gentle, remembering her own desperate choices when bills piled up. "Whatever he promised you, whatever he threatened, we can help. But I need to know what you did." The boy's shoulders slumped. "Mr. Vale gave me $500 to move a cookbook. Said it was a surprise for you, but I had to keep it quiet. I boxed it up, sent it to the wine cellar with a blank invoice like he said." "You're not in trouble," Opal assured him, already typing the location to Gabriel. "But I need you to stay with security, okay? Tell them everything you just told me." Her phone buzzed. Gabriel was heading to the cellar. His teams were securing the garden exits, cutting off Rocco's escape routes. She should wait here, let the professionals handle it. That would be the smart choice, the safe choice. But Opal was done being a chess piece others moved around the board. She wouldn't hide while Gabriel faced danger, wouldn't let anyone use her as leverage against him again. Taking a steadying breath, she squared her shoulders and headed for the cellar stairs. The service elevator would be faster, but also trapped. Stairs meant options, meant she could hear anyone following. Her bare feet made no sound on the steps as she descended into the cool darkness below. Motion sensors clicked on, illuminating rows of wine racks that stretched into shadows. The cellar was a maze of alcoves and temperature-controlled rooms, each dedicated to different vintages. Perfect for hiding things or hiding people. Somewhere above, she heard the muffled thunder of footsteps, security teams sweeping the main floor. Down here, the thick walls dampened everything to whispers. She moved carefully, checking labels on recent deliveries, looking for Tommy's blank invoice. A stack of boxes caught her eye, tucked behind a rack of Bordeaux. Too casual, too haphazard compared to the meticulous organization everywhere else. She crouched to examine them, heart pounding. The top box bore no markings except a delivery date. Today's date. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, she found her missing cookbook. The spine had been carefully split, creating a hollow space just large enough for a flash drive. Voices echoed from the stairwell. Gabriel's low command, another man's protest. They were getting closer. Opal tucked the cookbook under her arm and pressed herself against a support pillar, waiting. She wouldn't run, wouldn't hide. She had chosen this path with open eyes, chosen Gabriel knowing the danger. Now she would stand beside him and face whatever came next. The cellar lights flickered, emergency generators humming as they fought to stabilize the power. In that stuttering illumination, Opal saw shadows moving at the far end of the wine racks. Footsteps approached from multiple directions. Gabriel's teams converging, boxing in their quarry. She touched the sapphire ring, its beacon steady and true. Gabriel would find her. He always did. And this time she wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was choosing to meet him halfway, on her own terms. The cookbook felt heavy in her hands, weighted with secrets and betrayal. But Opal stood her ground, chin lifted as voices grew closer and security teams moved into position. She had saved Gabriel's life on pure instinct that first night. Now she would do it again, deliberately and without hesitation, because some choices were worth any risk. Through gaps in the wine racks, she caught glimpses of tactical gear, weapons ready, but lowered. Gabriel's men were professionals. They wouldn't risk shooting near the irreplaceable vintages unless forced. That gave her an advantage. She knew every corner of the cellar from inventorying stock, every hiding spot and blind angle. Opal pressed her back against the cool stone pillar, the cookbook clutched to her chest. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but her hands were steady. She had spent too long letting others write her story. The ex who gambled away her dreams, the creditors who threatened her future, the society folks who judged her worth by her size. Not anymore. Above, the party's chaos continued. But down here in the cellar's hushed darkness, Opal waited with quiet determination. She would meet Gabriel among these shadowed wine racks, and together they would end this game of secrets and lies. No more running, no more hiding. This was her choice, her stand, her moment to prove she was neither victim nor pawn. The wine cellar's chill wrapped around Opal as she moved between towering racks, her bare feet silent on the stone floor. Vintage labels blurred past: Bordeaux, Champagne, California Reds, each bottle worth more than her old catering van. The emergency lights cast strange shadows, making the cellar feel endless and maze-like. A sudden thud and choke echoed from around the corner. Opal pressed closer to the nearest rack, bottles clicking softly as her hip brushed them. In the tasting alcove ahead, Gabriel had Rocco pinned against a wall, one hand crushing the traitor's throat. Rocco's face was red, but his eyes gleamed with desperate amusement. He clawed at Gabriel's grip, wheezing out a laugh that scraped like broken glass. "Kill me," he gasped. "Won't matter. That stupid kid already traded the drive. Your rival has everything." Gabriel's fingers tightened. Rocco's eyes bulged. "Make him talk first." Opal's voice cut through the tension, steady and clear. Both men's heads snapped toward her. Something shifted in Gabriel's expression, a flash of pride mixed with exasperation at her defiance of safety protocols. But he eased his grip just enough for Rocco to draw a rattling breath. "The caterer, Tommy." Rocco coughed. He panicked when the lights went. Stashed the book behind the 82 Lafitte's tasting room. Kid probably pissed himself. As if summoned by his words, a figure appeared in the doorway. Tommy, the young caterer, trembled as he held out the cookbook. His uniform was wrinkled, bow tie askew. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "He said he'd hurt my sister if I didn't help." Opal crossed to him, movements careful and deliberate. The book's familiar weight settled in her hands. Her favorite volume on French pastry, now weaponized against her. From her apron pocket, she withdrew a paring knife. The spine's leather yielded easily to her blade. A clean seam, carefully glued. Professional work, meant to look untouched until now. Inside the hollow space, a black flash drive nestled. Like a deadly secret, heavy footsteps thundered down the cellar stairs. Multiple sets moving fast. Gabriel released Rocco, letting him crumple to the floor. In 2 long strides, he reached Opal and shoved her behind a thick stone column. "Stay down." The rival boss appeared first, flanked by gunmen. His dinner jacket was perfectly pressed, his smile sharp as a blade. "Quite the engagement party, Gabriel, though I prefer my surprises gift-wrapped." "You'll get your gift." Gabriel's voice was winter cold. "A reminder why crossing me ends badly." The first shot cracked like thunder in the enclosed space. Opal pressed herself against the column, the flash drive digging into her palm. Above, the party guests would hear only distant thuds, easily dismissed as mechanical problems. Gabriel moved like a predator, each motion precise and lethal. He drove his fist into the first gunman's throat, used the man's momentum to slam him into a wine rack. Bottles shattered, spattering $1,000 vintages across the floor. The rival boss fired twice. Gabriel ducked, swept the legs from the second gunman. They grappled on the wine-slick stones. More shots, more breaking glass. The air filled with the sharp scent of spilled alcohol and cordite. Opal clutched the drive tighter, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd chosen this, chose Gabriel, chose to stand her ground instead of running. Now she watched him fight with the same controlled precision he brought to everything, even violence. The last gunman went down with a sickening crack. Gabriel straightened, knuckles bloody, eyes storm dark. He looked at the rival boss, who was struggling to rise from where he'd fallen. "Tonight," Gabriel snarled, "you learn what happens when you try to destroy what's mine. No more wounds to lick, no more chances." Rocco hadn't moved from his heap by the wall, eyes darting between Gabriel and his former employer. The young caterer, Tommy, had vanished, hopefully to the safety of the security teams above. Wine dripped steadily from broken bottles, collecting in dark pools that looked too much like blood in the emergency lighting. The air felt thick with violence barely contained, with secrets finally dragged into the light. Opal's fingers cramped around the flash drive. Such a small thing to cause so much chaos. But information was power in Gabriel's world, and someone had tried to use her to steal it. A radio crackled. Security teams reporting the upper floors clear, guests secure in the safe rooms. The party's elegant facade had crumbled, but it had served its purpose. The trap was sprung, the traitor exposed, the enemy cornered. Gabriel kept his eyes locked on the rival boss as he reached back, fingertips brushing Opal's wrist in silent reassurance. She was safe. They had won. Everything else was just cleanup. The flash drive pulsed like a living thing in her grip, heavy with encrypted secrets and betrayal. Above them, the mansion hummed with contained chaos. Security, sweeps, frightened guests, staff trying to maintain order. But here in the wine cellar's cool shadows, time seemed suspended. Opal watched Gabriel's shoulders set with deadly purpose, his control absolute even in victory. This was who he was. Ruthless protector, calculated warrior, man of precisely measured violence. And she had chosen him, chosen this life, with open eyes and steady hands. No more running from hard truths, no more letting others write her story. The drive's edges bit into her palm, a reminder of everything that had brought them here. From that first gunshot at the pier to this moment in the wine-soaked cellar, every choice had led to this. Standing together, facing whatever came next. The control room hummed with tension as Opal placed the flash drive on the sleek desk. Screens lined the walls, showing security feeds from every corner of the estate. 2 technicians typed rapidly, isolating a terminal for the sensitive data. Ready? Gabriel's hand settled on her lower back, steady and warm. She nodded. The drive clicked into place. Files populated the screen, spreadsheets, video folders, encrypted documents that the tech team quickly decoded. Opal's breath caught as the scope became clear. Financial records showed millions flowing through children's charities into offshore accounts. Security footage revealed the rival boss personally executing witnesses on loading docks and in empty warehouses. "Mother of God," one of the techs whispered, scrolling through transaction logs linking to Rocco's shell companies. Gabriel's jaw tightened as he absorbed the evidence. This was more than leverage. It was annihilation. The choice crystallized. Hold it over the rival's head for future advantage, or destroy him completely. Opal watched Gabriel's face, seeing the decision form before he voiced it. "Burn it all," he said quietly. "End this cleanly." He pulled out his phone, dialing a number from memory. "Marcus, I'm sending you files. Push them to every agency contact and news desk simultaneously. Yes, all of it. Timestamp everything for authenticity." While the techs prepared the data burst, Opal's mind raced ahead. "The guests upstairs, they'll panic when this breaks. We need to control the narrative." Gabriel raised an eyebrow, inviting her to continue. "Pipe the music back into the ballroom. We'll make a proper entrance. Act like nothing happened. Dance, mingle, be visible. Don't let him create chaos on his way down." A slight smile curved Gabriel's mouth. "Brilliant," he murmured. "Natural strategist." The upload began, progress bars creeping across screens. Gabriel ordered the house PA system restored, letting elegant violin music flow through the mansion again. Security teams reported guests emerging from safe rooms, muttering but calm. Opal smoothed her dress, checking her reflection in a darkened monitor. A few wine spots on the hem, but otherwise presentable. Gabriel's jacket had a tear at the shoulder, but he wore it like battle honors. 3 minutes to first news alerts, a tech announced. Gabriel took Opal's hand, leading her toward the main stairs. "Ready to put on a show?" She squeezed his fingers. "Born ready." They timed their entrance perfectly. Just as they stepped into the ballroom, phones began chiming throughout the crowd. Guests pulled out devices, eyes widening at breaking news notifications. Gabriel guided Opal to the center of the floor as whispers rippled through the room. He drew her into a perfect waltz frame, leading her in smooth circles while their audience processed the bombshells dropping on their screens. Federal agents seen at multiple properties owned by prominent business figure. Breaking. Evidence links charitable foundation to international money laundering. Exclusive footage shows suspected mob boss in apparent execution. Through it all, Gabriel and Opal danced. His hand was warm on her back, his steps sure and practiced. She followed his lead, letting muscle memory from their brief dancing lessons take over. "Your rival's trying the south gate," she murmured against his collar. "I know." His smile didn't waver. "My people are steering him toward federal custody. Every exit he might try is already trapped." More phones buzzed. More gasps and mutters. But the music played on, and the couple at the center of the floor kept dancing as if this were any other engagement celebration. Across the room, a champagne glass shattered. Someone's wife was crying. Two men in expensive suits made hasty exits, only to return looking pale minutes later. "It's done," Gabriel whispered. "He's in custody." The song ended. Before Opal could step back, Gabriel pulled her close. His kiss was deep and deliberate, a public claiming that made several guests catch their breath. He was marking his territory, showing everyone exactly where he stood and who he stood with. When they parted, Opal saw the message land. Every eye in the room registered that she wasn't a temporary arrangement or a convenient cover. She was his chosen partner, proven under fire. Security teams began politely but firmly escorting guests to their cars. Sirens Dopplered past on distant roads as federal vehicles converged on properties across the city. The party dissolved in careful stages, maintaining the illusion of normalcy until the last town car pulled away. Gabriel's arms stayed around her as they watched headlights disappear down the long drive. Opal's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. The night's violence and victory caught up with her all at once. "You're trembling!" He turned her to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. "Just processing," she managed. "Did we really just—" "We did." He touched her cheek. "You were magnificent. Clear-headed under pressure, tactical when it mattered." She leaned into him, letting out a shuddering breath. "I chose this. Chose you, even knowing what it meant." "You're mine," he said softly, seriously. "In every way that means protected. First." His arms tightened around her. "Everything else comes after keeping you safe." Opal pressed closer, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart. Relief and want tangled in her chest, making her fingers clutch at his jacket. They had won. They were alive. They were together. The mansion settled around them, security teams doing final sweeps, staff clearing glasses and flowers. Outside, the last police sirens faded into the night. But in that moment, Opal felt only Gabriel's warmth, his possessive hold, and the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Dawn painted golden light through the estate chapel's stained glass windows. Opal wore a simple cream dress, her curves draped in soft fabric that caught the early rays. Gabriel stood beside her in a charcoal suit, his usual severity softened by the gentle way he held her hands. The estate manager and Gabriel's most trusted lieutenant served as witnesses, standing quietly near the altar. No fanfare, no forced smiles for cameras, just 4 people and promises that would reshape 2 lives. "I choose you," Gabriel said, his voice low and certain. "Not for protection or appearance, but because you make me want to build something lasting, something soft." Opal squeezed his fingers. "I choose you knowing exactly who you are. The danger, the duty, all of it. I choose to face it together." They exchanged rings, her engagement ring now paired with a simple platinum band, his a matching circle that looked both foreign and right on his scarred hand. The estate manager signed the certificate with a flourish, making it official. Through the week that followed, their new reality unfolded in steady steps. Federal agents swarmed the rivals' properties, boxing evidence and leading away shell-shocked lieutenants. News channels ran footage of handcuffed figures being escorted into courthouses. Rocco appeared briefly on security footage, shackled and hollow-eyed, being led into a federal building. His plea deal meant he would vanish into witness protection, taking his poison with him. Gabriel and Opal returned to Brooklyn with a rotating team of guards. The lawyer's office was all gleaming wood and leather, documents spread across the conference table. Opal read each page carefully as the attorney explained. "The kitchen lease and all business assets are solely in your name. Legally separate property, impossible to leverage against either of you. Your husband's investment is structured as a clean loan with standard terms." Opal signed with steady hands while Gabriel watched, approval clear in his eyes. This was her domain, her strength, protected but not controlled. The empty storefront transformed day by day. Opal selected equipment with meticulous care: industrial mixers, proof boxes, specialty ovens. Contractors came and went under the watchful eyes of Gabriel's security team, installing ventilation and laying tile. She called Maria, her former commissary partner, who answered on the first ring. "I was hoping you'd surface," Maria said. "Half our crew is still looking for work." "I need experienced hands," Opal replied. "People who know my standards and recipes. Tell them there are jobs waiting if they want them." Each evening, Gabriel returned from meetings that left new bruises on his knuckles, but stability in his territory. They shared takeout dinners in the bare apartment above the bakery, sitting on moving boxes and trading gentle touches. The rival's network is crumbling, he told her over pad thai. His people are either flipping or fleeing. No one will use you against me again. Good. She dabbed sauce from his lip. Because I plan to be very visible at this location? You'll have coverage, he promised. Subtle enough not to scare customers, heavy enough to matter. The grand opening drew a crowd that stretched around the block. Early morning sun glinted off the fresh paint and polished windows. The new sign gleamed, Opal's Sweet Kitchen. Her staff moved with practiced efficiency, crisp black aprons emblazoned with the logo she'd designed. Former commissary workers mixed with new hires, all trained to her exacting standards. Gabriel stood back, letting her shine, while remaining visible enough that certain people would think twice about causing trouble. His security team blended with the crowd, alert but unobtrusive. Opal gripped the ceremonial scissors, heart full as she looked at her dream made real. The ribbon parted with a satisfying snick, and applause rippled through the waiting customers. Gabriel stepped close then, his smile private and warm. "Marry me every morning," he murmured against her ear. She grinned up at him. "Feed me every night." Their kiss was sweet and claiming, unconcerned with the phones raised to capture the moment. Inside her kitchen, Opal loaded the first tray of cinnamon rolls into the gleaming oven. Gabriel's jacket draped her shoulders, carrying his familiar scent of cedar and gunpowder. She watched through the oven window as the dough began to rise, filling the air with warm spice. This was her territory, as surely as the streets outside were his. They had built this together, brick by brick and promise by promise, leaving no loose threads for enemies to grasp. The morning sun streamed through spotless windows, catching on her rings as she adjusted the temperature. Beyond the kitchen, she heard the happy murmur of customers, the efficient movements of her staff, the subtle shifts of security maintaining their posts. Gabriel appeared in the doorway, jacket missing but smile present. He watched her work with quiet pride, understanding that this was her domain to command. When she glanced up, his eyes held the same certainty she felt. Danger would always exist in their world, but so would this. Their home, their choice, their unshakable foundation. The timer chimed. Opal pulled out the first batch of the day, golden brown, and perfect. The scent of cinnamon and sugar filled her kitchen, her space, her future, secured by love and sealed with promises they would keep choosing every single day.